It's time, Fort Wayne. Your sports, your station. It's the Sports Rush with Brett Rump.
Max Landis.
Covering all the topics that hit a nerve here in the Summit City.
Clark, 11 yards, touchdown.
Only on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Now here's your host, Brett Rump.
The greatest, most interesting, most important person of all time.
You are incredible. Fordham won.
Yeah, well, you're half right.
What is this, amateur hour?
This is going to be huge.
I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just when I think you've said the stupidest thing ever, you keep talking.
I think that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
That boy ain't right.
The simplest way to put it, I have problems.
Welcome to the alleged show.
Let's head home on a Tuesday. It is the Sports Rush, your daily local sports fix, 4 to 6. I am Brett Rump along with Adam Lundy. We've got you connected with us on the Parkview Sports Medicine text line at 260-447-8500. We also have a jam-packed 2 hours taking you up until 6 o'clock, and then we'll turn it over to Brett Rump for the Mastodon's Coaches Show coming up tonight. How's that guy going to be at 2 places at once? Somebody tell me. Amazing.
Especially since we had to liquidate our 1380 chopper.
Yeah, I know. It was part of budget cuts. And, it was sold to the highest bidder, and it got $10.42. But anyway, we've got a packed show. Scott Agness is going to join us with the Fieldhouse Files. Of course, it's been a big week for the Pacers and the Indiana Fever. For the Fever, they get a key signing from a returnee. They get multiple players that are coming in on trades and free agent signings. It's been a very big week for the Indiana Fever. So we'll talk about that with Scott Agness coming up about 30 minutes from now. Also in hour number 2, Dylan Sin from the Journal-Gazette. We got to talk to him about Comet hockey.
Yeah, he's the new Comet guy.
Well, he's one of the
new Comet.
He broke in, had his first Comet coverage over the weekend. So, I'm just waiting to see where can we critique Dylan on his Comet hockey coverage. Is it any terminology that we can, but he did a good job covering the Comets on Saturday night.
Very good job, and looking forward to having him on.
He also is 1-0 as a Comets beat writer.
Hey.
Which blows the doors off that previous guy's record. But we'll talk to Dylan Sin, actually, about Indiana and Purdue, primarily basketball. And tonight they're both in action.
Yeah.
Indiana at Wisconsin. And Purdue is going to be at Iowa.
Yep, taking on the Hawkeyes in Carver Arena.
Carver Hawkeye Arena.
Yep, got to include the Hawkeye. Can't forget that.
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day, and I forgot to ask Don Fisher about it. Maybe I'm going to have to catch up with this topic sometime later, because we had plenty to talk about with Indiana playing the Purdue Boilermakers this past week. And so Don Fisher, we only have a certain amount of time. In fact, it's why we call it our 15 minutes with Fish, because we have 15 minutes.
As soon as that 15 minutes up, he has a timer, and he just hangs up.
Yeah, the phone goes dead. You hear 3, 2, 1.
Your time with Don Fisher has ended.
Yeah,
Please insert 50 more cents to extend.
Thank you for calling Don Fisher.
Oh, jeez.
But no, seriously, we just didn't have time to cover it. But I started to think about when I was younger, and I think a lot of our listeners probably remember the days of, what was it, St. John? Was it St. John Arena or St. John's Fieldhouse in Columbus? Jenison Fieldhouse in Michigan State. What was the Wisconsin older arena before Kohl Center? What was Wisconsin Arena? Because it was like an old barn. And then you had, of course, the old arena at Minnesota, which remarkably they still play in.
Yeah, it says prior to the Kohl Center, the basketball teams played at the Wisconsin Fieldhouse.
That's all it was called?
Yeah.
Well, that tells you how old it is. It didn't even have a commercial name, like a branded sponsorship. But no, I was kind of curious, out of all those old arenas, is there any that he misses? And does he have any good stories of broadcasting games from the old buildings? And am I missing any? Mackey's been around forever, so that's nothing new. And then you have Welsh Ryan in Evanston, and that's been renovated, right? It's been redone, but still not a big building.
No.
Right now they're doing, of course, the football stadium at Northwestern. Illinois Assembly Hall in Champaign, that's been around forever. What is it? State Farm Assembly Hall officially now, and it's been around forever. Michigan Chrysler Arena, which I think they call it Chrysler Center now, and it, something.
Chrysler Center, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew it as Chrysler Arena. But a lot of the classic homes, the ones I remember, Ohio State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. And like I said, Minnesota still plays there with the elevated floor.
Yeah, that's always crazy. I mean, I would be terrified about flying off that thing.
Butler doesn't have the elevated floor anymore, do they?
I don't think so. I can check for you.
When I was in college and I was broadcasting Valparaiso, at that time, Valparaiso Crusaders games, now, of course, the Beacons. But when I was the student broadcaster and I would go to the games, we played Butler. And I got the broadcast from Hinkle Fieldhouse, which checked off an item from my bucket list long before I had a bucket list. But the interesting thing was that was when the floor was elevated, and it was like 2.5, 3 feet. So when you sat on press row at the press table, you actually, your eye level looked right into the ankles and feet of the players, which was just a unique perspective to call a basketball game.
Yeah, it says the basketball court at Hinkle Fieldhouse, home of the Butler Bulldogs, is elevated 10 inches off of the concrete floor.
Okay, so it's not like it used to be.
No, it says it provides some give for players to run and jump on.
Yeah, it's been lowered to where I think 6 to 10 inches is probably somewhat standard in a lot of arenas.
I think so. I mean,
like the Coliseum floor doesn't sit on the ice.
Right. They have to assemble it on top, and it's about, I would say, maybe 10 inches or so.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, 6 to 10. But the idea at Butler is it used to be an elevator where you had to like take 3 steps from the bench to get up to the court, and
like Minnesota.
Yeah, kind of like what you've got at Minnesota now. But I was just thinking about all those old-time arenas, the old barns that you used to have in the Midwest. 260-447-8500, 260-447-8500. Dylan Sinn's too young to have been in any of the barns.
Probably. Yeah, I don't think he made it out to any of those.
No, got to find somebody in my generation. You probably don't remember any of those places.
No. That's going to be a no.
Yeah. They've got, what is it, the Shot? Or what's the Value City Arena in Columbus?
Ooh.
Ohio State Buckeyes. And it's part of the Schottenstein Center. And then
I've never been there.
And then you've got, it's a big place. And then you've got Michigan State, of course, with the Breslin Center, replacing Jenison Fieldhouse.
Somebody texted in, Parkview Sports Medicine text line, 260-447-8500, if you want to weigh in on your favorite arena in Big Ten basketball. This one's not Big Ten, but somebody wanted to mention when the Pistons were still in Fort Wayne and the Coliseum was being built, they did play at Northside High School.
Oh, that's true.
Yep.
They had some games at Northside High School before they got into the Coliseum.
Definitely a little bit smaller than some of those Big Ten barns.
Have you ever seen the historic photos? And I don't know if it's like, what is it, Fort Wayne history, or there's a Facebook page where you can go, and they've got tons of old photos of like downtown and back when the Coliseum was built. I've seen these posted, and it is kind of eerie to see the land back before the Coliseum was fully constructed, like when they just started construction on the Coliseum.
Yeah.
Because you were talking like 52 or something, early 50s. And you see what is now Coliseum Boulevard, but that was truly the outskirts of town. You know, back then, the high-end neighborhood was Lakeside Park, like Forest Park Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was the wealthy suburbs at the time. And so you get all the way out to Coliseum Boulevard, and it's like, you know, now going to Auburn. And so, it's kind of interesting when you see the photo, because there's nothing out there. There's no Glenbrook Square. There's no, I don't think there's any Northcrest at that time. It's pretty much farmland, some woods, a few neighborhoods, and then Coliseum Boulevard with very little on it. It's just It was Coliseum Boulevard was like 469. It was the bypass for the city, right? To avoid city traffic. Now that is city traffic. 260-447-8500. Getting nostalgic today.
You are, man.
I don't know why, but something got me on it.
It is hard to imagine there being no Coliseum, and it's also just thinking about that and how there was nothing around it. It must have been a very ambitious project at the time to just build something out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, we got to find some land. Well, let's go way out there outside of town, way out there. So, so it doesn't disturb any of the neighborhoods. And and here's the thing. Now we're in an era where everything is being centralized downtown, right? Mm-hmm. That's why we need a downtown arena. It's time. Let's get the downtown arena built.
Build it.
They finally got a deal done with Taco Bell, so that block is going to be cleared right across. It's just to the west at the Grand Wayne Center and just to the north of Parkview Field. Got that whole block, got it cleared out, parking garage, maybe some restaurants and gift shop or whatever, and build the arena.
Let's do it. Why not?
4,800 to 5,000 seats. Make it versatile enough that it can be basketball, volleyball, maybe wrestling when the wrestling tournaments are happening. And of course you can hold some small concerts there. People are so worried about, oh, no, we don't need one. What's going to happen with the Coliseum? The Coliseum has its place, and it attracts certain acts that look for a certain size venue. And you've got the Embassy Theater, and those are primarily theater acts that are looking for a theater with a certain type of stage and lighting. And so, all it does is it just gives more traveling entertainment a chance to make Fort Wayne a stop on their tour. Because what happens is these tours are set up. Fort Wayne is not one of the first target dates that those tours book. What they do is they'll see if they can get into like Indy and Cleveland or Detroit, and Fort Wayne would be a date that would be considered a routing date in between some of those bigger cities. And so what happens is, and I used to deal with this years ago, we used to help a nightclub establishment here in town that hosted a lot of concerts. I used to help them book bands by looking at routing and looking at current bookings of certain bands, figure out who might be driving down the highway, either on the toll road or 69. And I would go to them and I'd say, here's a band that's going to have a couple of dates open, and they're playing in Nashville, and then 2 days later they're in Detroit. And so there'd be a window of only 2 days that you could book that band and get the open date in between, which would be considered a routing date because it would be in their path between the two cities already booked. Well, the thing is, if, the Coliseum, for instance, if that happens to be a weekend or it's time when the Comets are in town or whatever it might be, that would rule that out. And so it gives you more venues to host events and the opportunity to perhaps bring more revenue from tourism and all. Wake up and get progressive, folks. If you think, oh, we can't grow, we've got enough, we're happy. I'm sorry. Is the car you drive now the same model and price as the car you bought when you were 16? I mean, you got to grow in advance. And
yeah.
And the downtown arena would be, I think, a great addition to our city.
Yeah, I think it's a logical next step. I mean, look at all the advancement we saw downtown when the Tin Caps moved from being the Wizards over by the Coliseum and built the arena downtown, Parkview Field.
Look what Indianapolis has done.
Yeah.
Market Square Arena was a perfectly fine arena, but they built Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which was Bankers Life Fieldhouse. What was it before that? Was there any other name before that?
I'll do a Google for you.
We're doing too much history on you today, Adam. And then Lucas Oil Stadium. Okay, it got built when you already had the Dome, and the Dome had only been around 20 years or so, and then the plans got put in place to build Lucas Oil Stadium. And, it's just worked out horribly for Indianapolis, hasn't it?
Oh, terribly. It was Conseco Fieldhouse from
Conseco, that's it.
1999 to 2011.
Now, the funny thing is I forgot about Conseco, but I still call the outdoor venue Deer Creek. I can't keep – I think – is it Ruoff Music Center now, or did they change?
Yes, I believe it's – I'll do another Google for you, Brett.
Yeah, I know. And then the Indiana Farmers Coliseum is now the Corteva Coliseum.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm just going to keep them coming. Oh,
it is Corteva Coliseum.
Yeah, because that's the host of the Barbasol Horizon League Championships coming
Do
up.
I have to Google if it's still Barbasol?
Yeah, could you check on Barbasol? No, I know that's correct. I just talked to the Horizon League last week.
You did.
260-447-8500. So Luka to the Lakers. He was introduced at a press conference earlier today. Looks to be in pretty good shape. That's going to be one of the keys. But, the question it rises, and it's very fair to ask this, what are the Lakers going to do about their center position? Because they traded their starting center. They don't have a lot of depth at center. And does this heat up the talks? Because the Lakers have always been a destination that's been mentioned, tied into Miles Turner, right?
Absolutely.
And, when they did have Anthony Davis, he had some injury issues where he was on again, off again. The Lakers got interested in Miles Turner. And now you've got Miles Turner approaching the end of a contract where the Pacers are going to have a tough decision on what to do with his future. And maybe the answer is to trade him. And the Lakers might just need a player like Miles Turner after the dust settles with the Dallas move to get Luka Doncic. And because I could see it fitting perfectly. I mean, you now have a team that's going to really stretch defenses and give Miles Turner a lot of space to operate. But I thought it was an interesting comment today from Rob Pelinka. Did you happen to see any of the press conference?
I saw a little bit of it, yeah.
I caught it at lunch.
Yeah.
And Rob Pelinka said there's not a championship caliber center that is available via the trade market right now.
Yeah, he called it dry.
Yes, and it said we may have to wait for the offseason to do anything about that. I thought that was an interesting comment.
I did too.
That he, that he didn't say there's a couple of guys we're looking at, or he was very coy in saying there's not really a championship, because somebody asked him about the center position, and he said, yeah, that's a question mark for us. And there's not really a championship caliber center available to us right now, and it might be a position we'll have to address in the offseason. I don't know if that means anything or if he's just trying to deflect attention away. But from what I've heard, there have been some preliminary talks. But the Pacers are holding firm that any deal with the Lakers has to include Austin Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
Good call. If you're going to try to pluck somebody off that roster, you don't want a 40-year-old LeBron James. And who's the next best option that you could get? Austin Reeves, who's young. He is a good shooter, 37% from behind the three-point line, and averages over 18 points per game. I'd say that's a fair deal. The Lakers aren't real comfortable with parting with Austin Reeves, and so that's kind of left the trade talks on the table, so to speak, where there's not been a lot of follow-up discussion. But I could see the Lakers maybe feeling like, let's look ahead at the upcoming market for bigs, and if they don't see somebody that they feel is a fit with the style they want to play, and they did say they're trying to assemble a roster that fits J.J. Redick's type of basketball he wants to play in L.A., if they don't find the right guy and they think Miles Turner could be that guy, do they take the gamble and wait to see if they can sign Miles Turner, or do they pull the trigger? And that's the tough position for the Pacers, because L.A. is expressing at the press conference, whether it's gamesmanship or what, they're willing to wait. They want to see, is Turner going to hit the free agent market? And maybe that's what they're talking about when they say it looks like it's something we're going to have to wait until the summer on. But I guess that's the big question. Is Miles Turner one of those guys that the Lakers could look to acquire and what would it mean for the Indiana Pacers? 260-447-8500. Got to check around the world of sports and see what's happening on this Tuesday. It's today's top headlines with Adam Lundy.
All right, thanks, Brett. Well, the NFL Referees Association today joined League Commissioner Roger Goodell in dismissing suggestions that officials favor the Kansas City Chiefs when working their games. A day after Goodell called it a, quote, ridiculous theory, NFLRA Executive Director Scott Green said in a statement that Goodell's comments were, quote, spot on. Former Indiana big man Khalil Ware has won the Kia Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month award for January. Ware had 2 games with at least 20 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 2 threes.
Who was the sponsor of that before Kia?
Oh, don't make me Google that, my friend.
Okay, yeah, no more Googling.
Ware had, he is the only rookie to put up those numbers in a game this season and is tied for the 4th most such games among rookies all time. So good month for Khalil Ware.
It's kind of interesting that Ware's tearing it up right now with Miami, and Jalen Hood-Schifino just got his name in the news because he was actually part, even though a distant part, of the Luka AD trade.
Absolutely. And the injury report for tonight's game for the Pacers against the Portland Trailblazers has come out. We've got 3 questionables for the Pacers tonight. Aaron Naismith with a right ankle sprain, Miles Turner with a right peroneal strain, and one more there for you. It is, I'll figure it out.
We'll have to Google that.
We'll have to Google that. My Word document got cut off. So,
Well, let me think. Nemhard's okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not anybody significant?
I mean, Turner is questionable.
I was following the game last night, and I'm thinking, who didn't play?
Never mind.
Walker?
Only 2 questionables. We're good.
Oh, only 2. Okay.
Only 2. Isaiah Jackson, Wiseman, obviously both out with their Achilles injuries.
Okay.
Those are your top stories today.
All right, there you go. Today's top headlines with Adam Lundy. Coming up on the show, we've got Scott Agness joining us to talk more Pacers and Indiana Fever and the Fever roster construction and how it looks and what's expected from the Fever in 2025. Also, hour number 2, Dylan Sin will join us. And since it's a Tuesday, we've got another edition of Tuesday Time Capsule Trivia just after 5 o'clock. It's a sports rush taking you home on a Tuesday on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Last week, if you remember, I was telling you how the Mastodons really needed 2 wins because that would put them in the running to maybe chase down Cleveland State for first place and get a regular season championship in the Horizon League. I also at the same time said if they don't get both against Cleveland State and on the road at Milwaukee, if they can't win both those games, they need to at least salvage a split. And after a split, they would still be a potential top 4, which gets a first-round bye and a second-round home game in the Barbasol Horizon League Championships. And I said what they couldn't do was lose both games because that would put them in jeopardy of falling out of perhaps even the top 5 and perhaps have to go on the road in the semifinal and not get the bye. So what happened? They split. Where the Mastodons second place safely right now in the top 4. So yeah, it was not a bad week. I mean, you had 2 of the toughest teams in the league. I mean, if you went into it last week, you saw that Cleveland State and Milwaukee were first and second in the league. And as of right now, Cleveland State still in first, and Purdue Fort Wayne has jumped up to second. And tomorrow night, the Mastodons will take on Wright State at the Coliseum. Tell you what, I'm glad we're at home this week. Yeah. Did you see the weather?
Yeah, it's supposed to be pretty nasty tomorrow.
Ice storm tomorrow night going into Thursday, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to be on a bus having to travel a couple of hours on that stuff.
No. Hopefully it'll just be a short and safe drive home after the game tomorrow night.
Yep, but if you don't make it to the game, I don't know what the weather is going to be like. Hope you do make it, but if not, you'll have coverage right here on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. We'll start with the pregame show at 6:45. Coming up tonight, Mastodon's Coaches Show. It's going to be a fun one because we've got not only men's basketball coach John Kaufman, but we'll get a chance to talk to the Iowan out of Oskaloosa, Iowa, big man Eric Mulder, who after missing 8 games made his return against Cleveland State. And so we'll talk to him. What I learned from Coach Kaufman when we were booking the show is, well, if we get Eric Mulder on and get him to agree to come on the show tonight, I have to ask him about his hunting because he is a very avid hunter And on off days, he looks to try to get out. And I tell you this, it's almost more of a commitment to be a hunter than it is to be a basketball player, because it's wake up before dawn.
Yeah, get out there.
Yeah, get out to your spot. But we'll talk to Eric Mulder. Plus, we've got women's basketball coach Maria Marquesano, and right now the women's basketball hero, Jordan Reed.
Yeah.
Who has a very interesting story about being a kicker on her high school football team, which just so happened to be a state champion.
Wow.
We'll tell you the full story when we get a chance to talk to her, but that'll all come up at 6 o'clock tonight. What else? Oh, and then we turn it over to Purdue basketball on the road at Iowa.
There you go. Iowa connection there.
Big night here at 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. Why did I say it that way?
I don't know, but looking forward to the rest of our programming tonight and the rest of today's Sports Rush.
Well, and meanwhile, we've got Indiana at Wisconsin trying to end a 27-year drought.
My goodness, is that's not even just a drought. That's like an entire ocean drying up.
That's like the bus didn't get there.
I don't know if it ever did.
Indiana at Wisconsin at the Kohl Center, and it will be a 20. And I heard Don Fisher tell Jim Coyle that 1998 was the year the Kohl Center opened, and Indiana won the very first game, played in the Kohl Center. You don't need to Google this. I know this is right. You're getting ready to Google once again. But the very first game they played was in the Kohl Center, and then Indiana hasn't won in the Kohl Center since.
Wow.
So they're almost 0 for coal, or getting coal, when they go to Madison. But tonight, Indiana, Wisconsin, you can hear that on our sister station, WOWO 92.3 FM. Got to talk Pacers and Fever. Pacers on the road. Got a nice win against Utah. And throw the records out, because road games are always tough, especially when you have to travel. You deal with altitude and all that. And the Pacers had a fairly quick turnaround for last night's game. And they battled all the way to the finish and actually won it down the stretch and beat Utah 112-111. We'll talk about that game. We'll talk about what the Fever are doing with their roster construction and what the expectations are for the Indiana Fever this season. Scott Agness from the Fieldhouse Files joins us next here on the Sports Rush, 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM. We give you a chance to win a large pizza to Pizza Hut coming up in our Tuesday Time Capsule Trivia about 30 minutes down the road. Also, Dylan Sin will join us from the Journal-Gazette to talk Indiana and Purdue basketball, both in action, both on the road tonight. And we will have both of them on our Federated Media family of networks, with Purdue taking on Iowa right after the Mastodons Coaches Show. The tip just after 7 o'clock, and Indiana will be heard on WOWO 92.3 FM. Also in action tonight, after you heard the Pacers beat Utah last night, they are in Portland, and they'll take on what is one of the NBA's hottest teams right now, the Portland Trailblazers. To talk all things Pacers and Indiana Fever, we are joined by the gentleman that is the owner, proprietor, the editor-in-chief of the Fieldhouse Files, Scott Agness. Scott, how are you today?
Good afternoon, Brett. Yeah, got to do it all in this role, right? But I just got back from Fever press conference as they introduced one of their latest free agent signings.
Well, and it's been a busy week for the Fever. My goodness, all of a sudden you get Kelsey Mitchell signing, and boom, that kind of opened up the floodgates. And I think, I said this yesterday, that I think it was very important for the Fever because it makes a statement, it makes a point that they were going to take care of the business with Kelsey Mitchell before they went outside and started bringing in other players. I just like that. The optics of it, to me, is the right protocol.
Yeah, I entirely agree. I thought they've done a nice job of expressing what their goals were and then going out and backing up what they had to say. And so there's a lot within the Fever organization, Brett, to be excited about. And you're right. There's been one news item, it seems like, every day for the last 10 days. You have free agency and all that. Plus, all while NBA trade deadline stuff here is approaching in the next couple of days.
Yeah, it keeps guys like you pretty busy or trying to cover both sides of it. Talk to me about Natasha Howard and Dawana Bonner. How are they similar? How are they different? How do they fit with this Beavers club?
Yeah, so Natasha Howard and DeWanna Bonner, both veterans, both have that experience factor, which was among the biggest things that the Fever were targeting this offseason. With Natasha Howard, it's a familiar face for Fever fans and for the team president, Kelly Kroskoff, who drafted her with their first-round pick back in 2014. She's got size, versatility. I think she's a player that will look really good running the floor and in pick-and-roll situations, but versatility is a key word for her. And then on the other side is DeWanna Bonner, who is up there in age in terms of basketball at 37. You ordinarily, in years previous, didn't have players of this age. But LeBron and Tom Brady has seemingly changed the game there. But she is a player that has also won multiple WNBA titles. She has great familiarity with the coaching staff who came over from Connecticut. She was with the Connecticut Sun for the past 4 years. So I think my overwhelming takeaway thus far, Brett, is they re-signed their own in Kelsey Mitchell, and they brought back and created a lot more familiarity from the front office to the coaching staff to these new additions.
And when you talk about these new additions, to me, are they both a 4, or can Bonner play the 3?
Bonner can play almost every position out there. I remember seeing her in the playoffs bringing the ball up. She's kind of thin to be playing center spot, but I'd really feel comfortable with her playing either guard spot or in particular out on the wing. I think she's traditionally more of a 4. Natasha Howard probably the 3. Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell are your starting backcourt. And I think on their to-do list still, Brett, is to go and get their backup point guard now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly what I said yesterday. That's, and they cleared some cap availability by waiving a couple of players, including Grace Berger, which I'm sure a lot of Indiana fans were kind of sorry to see that happen, but it's very understandable. If you're not going to get on the court, they can't continue to pay you for your great job of sitting on the bench. But
I think it just felt like she didn't get a real opportunity. I think, Brett, that's the main thing that a lot of the fans are frustrated about, that she played the first couple games, but then kind of was buried, was kind of forgotten about. In a second year where normally, right, we see players take off from first year to the next, and after having a true off season, she's overseas right now playing. But yes, that is the consequence of this team rapidly trying to improve its roster.
Did they talk at the press conference about the process of getting these players signed? Did those players and their agents reach out, or did the Fever actually initiate the conversations?
Did not get to the specifics on that front. What we did hear was GM Amber Cox shared how re-signing Kelsey Mitchell was number 1, and then from the very beginning, since she joined the franchise there in October, in this newly created role, really, that her and Kelly Kroskoff had conversations of bringing back Natasha Howard. She fills an obvious need there up front and from the leadership standpoint. And as they emphasized today, it's also telling when a player who generally knows what the city's like, what the franchise is like, how things are operated, is interested and willing and commits to returning back to the franchise. And that's something Natasha Howard's doing here. So who made the first call, probably the Fever in this case, but we do not know.
Sophie Cunningham also signed from Phoenix, or played with the Mercury last year. What role will she have? Backup? Is she going to have a chance to crack into a starting spot? What's her role going to be?
No, I would not expect for her to be in the starting lineup. I see her coming off the bench, perhaps even with playing in a role. You got Lexi Hull, who's back there and would be moving to a reserve spot. I think last year they were asking more of her towards the second half into the season, which is interesting, right? The first half she really wasn't playing ton. Then the second half, she became one of the most valuable players. Mm-hmm. I think now Lexi will come off the bench. I expect Sophie to come off the bench. She has familiarity. She was a teammate with Breon January, who's going to be an assistant coach here. So my overall, again, takeaway is just the comfort with which these players have with one another. And there's that great familiarity can lead to better success on and off the court. With the Pacers, we're talking about continuity. With the Fever, you're talking about relationships, which then leads to trust on and off the court.
Has Caitlin Clark earned the opportunity to have a voice before they make these decisions? Do you know if there was any discussions with her?
I can guarantee you there were discussions with her. Now, was she getting updated and kept abreast of every call and idea and person they checked into? Probably not. I think you realize, look, she's in year one. She's the face of the league. Let's not make any doubt about that. You're building this practice facility in large part, in my opinion, to keep her here in a couple of years when she could, they could. We'll see with the new collective bargaining agreement, but you just want to make this and be all in with the player. And so I do believe she has some influence, or she is kept in the loop, but I doubt she's making calls on their behalf or anything like that.
Scott Agness from the Fieldhouse Files is joining us here on the Sports Rush. Let's talk Pacers basketball last night. I guess you could probably look at the score. Didn't have a chance to see the game, but there's two obvious questions. Number one, why was it this close? And number two, how did the Pacers come back and win?
Yeah, so it was a situation where they just really didn't play well, and it was, quite frankly, a game they should have lost when you consider what we saw and the numbers. And I mean, they start 1 of 11 from three-point land. They finished 24%, were out-rebounded by 23. You just do not see that at all. Now, they kept their turnovers down, and what was key is they had a big fourth quarter with Siakam scoring 10 of his 22. Thomas Bryant, who was pitiful in the first 3.5 quarters, came alive in that final 5 minutes, and that's where we saw the Pacers make that big run late in the game. And I think that's a testament to this stick-to-itiveness of this coaching staff with their players, and also the players not checking out or being, doubting where they're currently at. They went into that fourth quarter down by 5, trailed by as many as I think 12 in that fourth quarter. But they just hung in there, and that's one you got to get, because now you're headed to Portland. They're already in Portland and playing a second night of a back-to-back in a city where they have won once in the last couple of decades. So that's by no means an easy chalk game that typically, I mean, this Utah team's the worst record in the Western Conference. You would have assumed it was a freebie, but that was not at all the case.
Yeah, you look at this road trip and you think, a couple of softies to start it out, and they struggle with Utah, and then they got a Portland team that's playing as well as they've played all year with back-to-back wins over the Phoenix Suns coming into the game tonight. All right, so when we talk the Pacers, I got a question. It's all tied into this big Luka Doncic trade to the Los Angeles Lakers, because the Lakers had to give up Anthony Davis, and now they have a huge hole at center. And I'm obligated to ask the question, Scott, because it's just what we do. Miles Turner, any talks between the Lakers and the Pacers now that the Lakers have an obvious need for a 5?
They do, and I thought it was interesting how we heard Rob Pelinka of the Lakers say he was asked about, should they upgrade or will they make any moves? And the free agent market, he goes, look, in terms of trades and trying to find a center, it is dry out there. There's not much available. And I just do not expect the Pacers to move on from Miles, because given that statement and given what we're all hearing in terms of the center spot and trying to upgrade it, you cannot simply move on from Miles. For instance, for one, why would you? But second of all, you would have to get a significant starting caliber center that isn't just starting caliber, but also fits in with the Pacers' playing style. And I think Miles is integral to what they are doing on both ends of the floor. And so, yes, he's in a contract year. Yes, he's going to get paid quite well this offseason. But the Pacers have his bird rights. They could go into the luxury tax. They could trade other players. I see no reason why they should or will move on from Miles.
Herb Ziman willing to spend the extra money?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a matter of making it worthwhile. And what I mean by that is you would not go to the luxury tax how this current group is constructed. It's not a championship contending team. But I think if you get there, if you become a contender, or you make it back to the Eastern Conference Finals, let's say, this season, and you add a piece, then I think you absolutely have to be willing, and I think he is. I mean, you got to remember that he's the longest tenured owner here. He's sitting there a healthy 90 years old. He wants to maximize this window and take advantage, being in a small market, of a team that is having some success right now. No team was better than them in January. So I don't expect them to pay in the tax this year, but I think they have to be willing, and it's probably likely that they will next year.
Who wins a championship first down in Indianapolis, the Pacers or the Colts? Because they both seem to be in similar situations.
Yeah, I just think NFL-wise, it relies on a quarterback, and if you don't have that, you have nothing. And right now, too many questions and answers with Anthony Richardson. The difference, though, is there's a lot more parity. There's a lot more balance, generally speaking, in the NFL, although I say that, and we're all looking forward to Kansas City very likely three-peating coming up on Sunday. That said, I think Pacers would be closer until the Colts get a quarterback.
Scott, always enjoy our conversations and look forward to more great coverage of the Pacers and the Fever. And I'm sure you're going to be posting stuff about the press conference today, or is that already up?
Yeah, the press conference is already up on YouTube. I'm just starting my story right now from what I witnessed, saw, and was part of here earlier today. Yep.
Always great. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Brett.
Scott Agness from the Fieldhouse Files. And if you don't have your subscription and you're a Pacers or Fever fan, you want to keep up with the latest with Caitlin Clark and company, you want to get your subscription to the Fieldhouse Files at thefieldhousefiles.com.
Absolutely. Just wanted to give a quick shout out. You mentioned the Indianapolis Colts. I just had this come across my timeline about 10 minutes ago. Wide receiver Kay Guilford of Fort Wayne Northrop High School has been named the Colts/Nike's next one. The next one is a program, an invite-only event for the top 32 high school prospects from each NFL market.
Wow.
So congratulations.
Absolutely. And the All-SAC girls team was announced.
Yeah.
Why is there 12 players on a high school girls first team?
I don't know.
I mean, I mean, it's nice, and I'm not trying to take anything away from any of the girls that made the first team, but you know, most colleges, I mean, even the All-American first team is 5 players, right?
Right.
And then you look at like the Horizon League, 11 teams. 5 players make first team. And I'm kind of like, you only play 5 players at a time. That means there's only 50 players that would be starters in the Summit Athletic Conference, and they have like 11 or 12 that made first team. I think it kind of waters it down a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I understand wanting to give recognition to all these players, but at some point, it makes it a little bit less prestigious when you have so many getting in.
Then they got second team and honorable mention on top of it.
Yep.
So
yeah.
But congratulations truly to all the girls that did get recognized by the coaches of the Summit Athletic Conference and got first team recognition, because I saw that come out. I don't know if that was today or last night.
Last night, but yeah. Definitely new to the press.
Coming up, we've got a chance for you to win with Tuesday Time Capsule Trivia. Also, Dylan Sin will be our guest in hour number 2. It's the Sports Rush on 1380 The Fan and 100.9 FM.